Have you ever heard of the fire that simply refused to go out? Not for a day, not for a week, but for decades. This isn't a myth or a legend. It's the very real story of Centralia, Pennsylvania, a town that has been burning from below for over 60 years. It all started back in 1962. Centralia was a small, bustling coal mining town. Like many similar towns, it had a landfill. The local fire department decided to do a routine cleanup burn of the landfill to clear out some space. This was a common practice at the time. They set the fire, let it burn for a bit, and then doused it with water, believing the job was done. But they made one critical, unseen mistake. The landfill was located in an abandoned strip mine pit, and what they didn't know was that the fire hadn't been fully extinguished. It had found its way into a network of abandoned coal mine tunnels snaking beneath the entire town. At first, nobody noticed. Life went on as usual. But soon, strange things started happening. Residents began complaining about a foul, sulfurous smell. Smoke and steam started mysteriously rising from the ground, sometimes right in people's backyards. The ground itself became warm to the touch, so warm that in winter, snow would melt in strange patches. It was like the town was sitting on a giant, slow-cooking stove. Still, for years, the true scale of the problem wasn't understood. People tried to live with it. They patched the cracks in their basements and tried to ignore the constant smell of burning coal. Some even found it a bit of a novelty. But the underground fire was relentless, slowly and steadily consuming the rich anthracite coal seams that were the town's lifeblood. The fire was invisible, a hidden monster moving silently beneath their feet. The situation became impossible to ignore in the late 1970s and early 1980s. The dangers became terrifyingly real. A gas station owner had to close his station when he discovered the gasoline in his underground tanks was heated to a dangerous 172 degrees Fahrenheit. Then, in 1981, the ground literally opened up. A 12-year-old boy named Todd Dombowski was playing in his grandmother's backyard when a sinkhole, 4 feet wide and 150 feet deep, suddenly yawned open beneath him. He was swallowed by the earth, clinging desperately to a tree root as hot, toxic steam billowed up from the abyss. He was saved by his cousin, but the incident sent a shockwave of terror through the community. The hidden fire was no longer just a nuisance. It was a deadly threat. Scientists and engineers were brought in. They drilled boreholes to measure the extent of the fire and the toxicity of the gases, which included lethal levels of carbon monoxide. The readings were shocking. The fire was spread over a huge area and was moving unpredictably. Several ambitious and expensive plans were proposed to extinguish the blaze. They talked about digging it all out, creating trenches to cut it off, or flooding the mines with a slurry of water and ash. But every plan was deemed either too expensive, too impractical, or too uncertain to work. The estimated costs ran into the hundreds of millions of dollars, with no guarantee of success. The fire was too big, too deep, and too well established. With no solution in sight, the government made a drastic decision. In 1983, Congress allocated more than $40 million to relocate the residents of Centralia. It was a built program. Families were offered fair market value for their homes, allowing them to escape the danger and start new lives elsewhere. For most, it was a heartbreaking choice. This was their home, a place where their families had lived for generations. But the risks were too great. One by one, the houses were boarded up and then demolished. The streets grew quiet. The town began to disappear. By the early 1990s, Centralia was a ghost town. The population for Tories from over 1,000 to just a handful of die-hard residents who refused to leave. They fought in court for the right to stay in their homes, arguing that their properties were safe. Today, only a few people remain, living in a town that exists mostly on old maps. Walking through Centralia now is a surreal experience. Paved roads buckle and crack from the heat below. Steam and smoke still vent from fissures in the earth. Warning signs caution visitors about the unstable ground and toxic gases. The once bustling streets are now overgrown fields, with only a few lonely buildings, a church, and some cemeteries remaining as silent witnesses to the community that was lost. The section of Route 61 that ran through the town was permanently closed. becoming what is now famously known as the Graffiti Highway, an apocalyptic-looking stretch of road covered in layers of colorful graffiti, before it was eventually buried. The Centralia mine fire is a slow-motion disaster, a stark reminder of the unintended consequences of our actions. It's a fire that has outlived generations. Experts estimate there's enough coal underground to fuel the fire for another 250 years. It will simply keep burning, a subterranean inferno, long after the last person who remembered Centralia in its prime is gone. The fire that was started to clean up a little bit of trash ended up consuming an entire town, creating a modern-day ghost story of Fidos to the enduring and sometimes terrifying power of nature. Thank you for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I did, make sure to subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more incredible stories from our world's history. See you in the next video.